Welcome to Sollu Kaburz podcast. It's cricket time, and what better occasion to talk about Test cricket than the World Test Championship itself? It's India versus New Zealand. The hype is real, and two best teams of the Test cricket arena in the past few years are competing, and rightfully so. And we are going to talk all things about it. And with me is joining cricket writer and statistician from New Zealand, Michael Wagener. Welcome to the podcast, Michael. Are you another tough cookie Wagoner who's taking everything to the chin in the cricket from the cricket fans who say, bro, cricket is not the game of numbers, bro, it's more and stuff like that? Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, g'day. Yeah, no, I'm not like Neil in terms of I'm perhaps a little bit more laid back, not quite as aggressive. We spell our names differently, and I'm quite a bit taller than him.
Right.
And someone who met us both thought that we were brothers. We look a little bit similar, and asked him in a press conference how come his brother, who was taller than him, was a spin bowler, and he, the shorter one, was a fast bowler, and he didn't know what he was talking about because he hadn't actually met me at that point. So no, I'm not really anything like Neil in terms of that. I'm a little bit more laid back.
Perfect. Getting into this straight away, just for the context, right? I just saw your tweet very recently where you said this is the best era for New Zealand Test cricket, right? So, can you just list out, like, very quickly in the past one decade, right? What are the biggest moments of your New Zealand Test team, and where does this World Test Championship final rank in its Test cricket history if they happen to win this? How much will it mean to them for a start?
Look, okay, so if we win this, then without a doubt, this is the biggest moment in New Zealand cricket history.
Hmm.
The first win over Australia in Australia was big. The first win over England in England was big. First series victory, those were all big moments. The fact that it took 30 years to win the first Test match, or something like that, that was a big moment when that finally happened. In 26 years, I think it was. And then the Champions Trophy that we won in '99 was big, but nothing would come close to being the world champions in Test cricket. In the first time that a championship's been run, nothing would come close to that.
Right. Throughout the cricket history, what is it with New Zealand and its relationship with knockouts, right? So many semi-finals, so many finals. Obviously, you've won the Champions Trophy in the 99, but I can remember, 1992 semi-final, and, I believe 2003 as well. Obviously, 2015 World Cup, 19 World Cup, 19 World Cup was yours, basically. Used to
Yeah.
win. It was robbed. And, so many knockouts over the years, over the decades. What is stopping you from, like, getting past that last final hurdle?
Well, normally the fact that we're not good enough to win. Yeah, normally we're doing pretty well to make the semi-finals. The fact that I think it was one of the World Cups, was it 99 maybe, where we made the semi-final, and there's
Yes.
no way that we were in the top four. There was no way that we were one of the top four best teams. But we put a good run together, and that's one thing that we have been capable of doing, is winning the small matches. And one thing New Zealand has been traditionally is clinical against a team that's ranked lower than them, or a team that gives New Zealand a sniff. We put them away. I think New Zealand's the only team that's never lost to a non-test playing opponent. So New Zealand's never lost a game against a non-test opponent, and other than a few games against New South Wales, the county matches. And other than that, we've never lost a game against a non-test opponent, an official match. We've lost a warm-up game against Ireland and a warm-up game against Bangladesh before they had test status, and that was it. So not official matches, whereas every other team has. And we don't get upset in World Cups. We win all of the little games. When we do get the odd upset win, it means that we make the semi-final or the quarter-final. We make the knockouts, and so almost every World Cup we're in the knockouts. But it's normally a pretty good achievement to get there. It's not a choke to lose at that point when we're playing a better team. I think we probably did choke a little bit in the last World Cup final. There was some inexplicably bad things happen. Trent Boult, who's probably the best outfielder in the world, stepping on the ropes for that catch that would have won the game. Just thing after thing that happened that was just out of character. And you wonder whether or not they were thinking about things too much. They're overthinking it a little bit, and hopefully that doesn't happen in this final. There's already some signs that we're tinkering with our lineup, and it's a little bit concerning that there may be a little bit of overthinking going on. But we're finally at a position where we're a good enough team that we deserve to be there. This is not we're not there. I mean, look, there were 4 teams that were good teams. We're not the only; these 2 are not the only 2 good teams, but we deserve to be in the conversation at least.
Is that what it is different about this particular knockout? Do you think this your best chance to like cross that particular final hurdle? I thought you came close in 2015 because that was an amazing team. Obviously, 2015 World Cup was a better team than the 2019 World Cup team. But is this the best chance, best foot in the door that you have in terms of winning a world championship after what you said in 1999 and something like that?
Yeah, I think a legitimate world championship. I think the Champions Trophy. There's always that sort of the idea that there's an awful lot of luck in winning that one.
Right.
And I guess there's always going to be an asterisk beside this one because of COVID. And Australia missed out because David Boone docked them 2 points for slow overrates. There are some luck that has gone our way to get us here, but it's the first time we've gone into a final and we're not written off by the bookies. They would say at the moment that I think at the moment the odds I saw suggested it was about a 55% chance for India and about a 40% chance for New Zealand. Well, that's pretty close. And I think if it had been at Lords, which it was initially supposed to be, it would probably be 45-45. I think moving it to Southampton was a brilliant move by Ganguly, who made the announcement on behalf of the ICC a few hours after the ICC announced that they hadn't made a decision. All of a sudden they had, and it was now too late to take it back. I think it was a brilliant move to go to a spin-friendly venue, and we'll see whether or not the groundsman's going to oblige them or not. But I think at Southampton, a ground New Zealand have never played at, there is certainly an advantage to India there. But who knows? It's close enough that 2 or 3 good bits of cricket will decide it.
Yeah. Speaking of the road to the World Test Championship, right? Do you find it fair criticism that New Zealand has played a little less competitive cricket than the other teams, as in Australia, England are playing 5 matches and still not getting the due credit to make it to the World Test Championship, and India is playing a lot of test matches. New Zealand has made it here by playing less test matches. Is that a fair criticism to say? Because I think it's unfair because if people are not ready to play 5 test matches with New Zealand, then it's the fault of the other board, not the fault of the New Zealand, right? In my opinion. So what are your thoughts on that?
It's a bit of both. New Zealand's season is quite short because we're an island surrounded by 2,000 kilometres of water, so it rains a lot. Even in the middle of summer, it rains. Even in the middle of winter, it rains more. Spring and autumn, it rains. So you have to pick your times to play the games when you're going to be able to get through them. So our season's short, and therefore you can't play that many matches. It is part of it, and the ones that earn the money are the ones you've got to play, which are T20s and one-day games. So if the game's going to survive, we have to have more of that. But part of it is, while we got more points for each win, we also lost more points for each loss. I pulled the numbers a while ago. I can't remember the exact numbers. I think for every match New Zealand lost, we lost 45 points. For every match that Australia lost, they lost 27 points. So yes, we got more for our wins, but we also lost more for each loss. And in the end, the final was decided by who lost the most points, not who gained the most. So they had to lose more games than us to be able to get down to that point. So I think, playing more games didn't really make much difference. In fact, if anything, the short series with Sri Lanka, where one partnership that won a match cost New Zealand 60 points. New Zealand were in command in that game in one big partnership, and the whole game was turned around, and that was 60 points. So a short series there actually cost New Zealand significant.
Yeah, and also why countries are not ready to play, even when for example, New Zealand is visiting abroad like Australia or India or England, even they don't play too many matches with New Zealand. Isn't that also a part of the blame?
Yeah, I mean, part of that is the size of New Zealand television market. and the time zone. Like if we're going to tour South Africa, say when India tours South Africa, it's a reasonable. It's not a great time, but it's a reasonably good time. The games are on in the evening, so for TV, it's a good market, good time to watch. People get home and watch the cricket. So, and there's a big TV market, so they're worth a lot of money. The rights for South Africa, if India's touring, so it's in their best interest to have a long series because they're going to earn good money for it.
Sure.
When New Zealand tours South Africa, New Zealand's only got 5 million people. About a third of them don't care about cricket at all. So you've got a very small potential market. And games against South Africa are being played. They start at 11 o'clock at night and go through till 6 o'clock in the morning. Now, is that the sort of time that people are going to be watching? Not really. So the TV market, in terms of the money for it, is very low, what New Zealand TV companies will pay for it. So it's going to cost South Africa to put an extra test on against New Zealand. They would have to pay, they'd lose money on that extra test. Whereas playing against India, every extra test will make them money. So there's a natural incentive to play a 4-test series against India and a 2-test series against New Zealand.
Capitalism at work.
And the only way to fix it is to have more of the ICC money distributed evenly rather than going just to the big boys.
Exactly. 100%. You were talking about Lords was Southampton, right? What exactly are the disadvantages, like advantages? Because Lords would have been a natural fit for Bolt and Southee and Jamieson. You have only come to England with, I guess, 2 spinners or 3 spinners, if I'm not sure. And you're stuck on Southampton and you're supposed to turn against Ashwin, Akshay Patel, and all the blokes who are just fresh off England's exploits in India, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I don't think Southampton's going to turn that much more. I think, but I think there is a little bit of assistance, and so there is, if you're not used to playing against the ball turning quickly, and I mean the ball turns everywhere. It's how quickly it turns that makes it difficult. If you're not used to the ball turning quickly, you've got to adjust your technique for that. And if you haven't had a chance to practice against it, then good luck. Now, I know that one of the things that New Zealand players have been doing is they got kitty litter for cat toilets, and they spread that out on the pitch to mean that when they were throwing the ball down, it was splitting off a length, and they were making rough patches in their training. So they created a day 5 pitch with footmarks for the coaches to spin the ball at them. So they were practicing against that because they just knew it's the sort of detail they get into in training, thinking, what are the scenarios that we could get to? We need to practice for that. So, but it's all well and good practicing. It's different in the game. And if you've grown up playing on pitches that spin quickly as opposed to ones that spin slowly, it's just a different game.
Sure.
So, there's a big advantage there that it will probably spin a bit quicker. The other advantage, too, is that Lords, is a place that New Zealanders have played. Ross Taylor played for Middlesex, so that was his home ground. Kane Williamson's played county cricket and played in Lords. When New Zealand have toured there, we've always played at Lords. We've never played at Southampton. So there's that degree of familiarity. India has played there twice, and I believe we're based there for a training camp as well.
Yeah.
So it's a place they're familiar with, whereas it's a new environment for New Zealand. And there's all those little idiosyncrasies about where the just judging the outfield, the speed of the ground, the where the wind comes from, how the light looks. One of the big differences in home advantage that people don't realise is the home team gets run out a lot less often than the away team.
Okay.
And the home team gets more runs in a match than the away team. So the ability to judge a single is greatly improved by being familiar with the ground and being able to judge from looking at where the ball is, just the instinctive idea as to where that ball is, if you're going to have enough time to get back. That sort of advantage is hard to quantify, but it does exist.
Sure. So what kind of a pitch do you think Southampton will behave like? Is it a top, win the toss, bat first, win the toss, don't know what to do, win the toss, ball first? What do you think it's going to be? What do you think captains are going to take the call for?
Well, hopefully it's win the toss, don't know what to do. That's what you want. You want one where there's enough in it that winning the toss is taken out of the equation. And I think one of the things that England have done quite well in their county cricket recently is they have said that the opposition there were too many bowl first pitches. So they said now the away team gets to decide if they want to bowl first, they can bowl first. If they want to bat first, then you have a toss. So by doing that in the domestic game meant that they've stopped making so much bowl first pitches and then made fairer pitches that because it was, the home teams are suddenly going, well, we don't want to have too much grass on it, because we'll just get put in and get rolled early. And it's sort of they were a bit worried that there were too many medium paces just trundling up and hitting the seam and jading all over the place and winning games for their team on the first day.
What do I call them? Sorry to interrupt. What do I call the right arm wobblies? Left arm wobblies. And I mean, when you play against some of those guys who the ball just doesn't quite arrive and it doesn't get where you're expecting it to when you're on a green pitch, because you play a bit of that in New Zealand because it rains a lot. You learn to play that. They're very, very frustrating to play against. Because you've got these guys steaming in and bowling fast, and it means the ball arrives roughly where you'd expect it to, and you're a bit beaten for pace. But when the guys that come in, it just doesn't quite get to you. It's just so annoying, and no one wants to watch that. So it's quite good that they've ruled that out. But so I think the pitch is likely to be a reasonably fair one. I think the ICC aren't going to want to be a win the toss, win the match sort of game. I hope there's going to be something for the quick bowlers up front that'll flatten out for the batsmen in the middle, and then it will get a bit up and down and turn a bit on day 4 or 5. That's what I hope. It should be the kind of toss where captains are happy to lose because they don't have to make a call. And speaking of right arm wobblies, right? Like, it just reminds me of Colin de Grandhomme in Lord's final, where he annoyed the hell out of Joe Root with his right arm wobbly with fantastic economy and so on. But what do you think on this particular pitch will be the combination for Kiwis? Because they have plenty of fast bowlers. This Southie Bolt, Jamieson, Wagener, Matt Henry is doing pretty good in this particular test match. Are they going to play 2 spinners? Will they even dare to play 2 spinners? If they're playing 1 spinner, who's going to be the guy? Is it Patel or Santner? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's very hard to pick Gary Stead's mind. He's in the past is a big fan of an attacking spinner rather than a holding spinner. So he dropped Santner the first thing he did when he turned up and said, I don't see him as the sort of spinner I want. And then went back to him after playing a few games and realizing that he adds quite a lot of value to the team with the balance that he offers. I wonder whether or not it's going to come down to a decision between Wagener and Jamieson. And I think Wagener with the Duke's ball, because it stays hard and doesn't get as variable, his short ball attack isn't so effective. So he turns into a left arm medium fast rather than a left arm terrifying. And at left arm terrifying, he's a lot better than a left arm medium in swing bowler. And so I think he might be the one to miss out in order to play de Grandhomme and Ajaz Patel. The 2 A Patels in the airplane. But potentially, Ajaz Patel is a magnificent bowler. I mean, he plays on pitches that don't suit him, and he was the top wicket taker in New Zealand domestic cricket 3 years in a row, playing on New Zealand pitches. Now, it's not unheard of for a spinner to do that, but it's unusual to do it once, let alone to do it 3 times. And he played the advantage. He played at Napier, which is the ground that I think India said that like every test in New Zealand at Napier, it's warm and dry and it breaks up and it turns. So he does have the advantage that that's his home ground. But still, you're still playing half his games away and managing to do that. So I think they're likely to go for him. The problem with that is it means that you then have effectively. It makes a big hole in the batting to take out Santner, who is a test number 7, and bring in Ajaz Patel, who is, I think he's batting at number 10 simply because Trent Bolt's trying to work on his record for the most sixes for a number 11, not because he's better than Trent Bolt as a batsman. So the idea of bringing in a number 11 for a number 7 changes the dynamic. So then you say, well, you need to have de Grandhomme in the side at number 7. And by bringing him in at number 7, that means then you've got to drop one of the quicks. So, there's a decision there, which way do you go? it's a big call to leave out Wagener, who's been our best bowler until just recently, where Southey's sort of taken over that title.
Yeah.
But the Duke's ball doesn't seem to suit him.
Sure. Speaking of an offshoot question, right? What is this New Zealand's relationship with one Indian spinner that comes out and performs for them? Deepak Patel, Jitan Patel, now Ishodi a little bit, Ajaz Patel. Is there a weird mystery over there, or it's just happening? It's just a mere coincidence.
Well, I think part of it is genetics, in that if you're not very tall, you end up being a spin bowler rather than the fast bowler. So, and because the Asian players tend to be shorter, tend to go towards being spin bowlers. I mean, Ajaz Patel, when he was living in India, was actually a fast bowler. He came to New Zealand. He went to play for his club, and he was the fifth best fast bowler, but easily the best spinner. And so he decided to change what he did. And so he hadn't actually been a spin bowler in India. When he came to New Zealand, he was. Interestingly, the other Patels, Jitan Patel, and Jitan Patel was born in New Zealand. His parents were born in New Zealand. He didn't speak Hindi or any of the local dialects. To the point that his teammates named him Dave because they said he didn't deserve to have an Indian name. So that's his nickname was Dave, because the other players knew more about India than he did. And Deepak Patel was born in Kenya and grew up in England. And so while they are Indian, perhaps by ethnicity, they didn't really have a strong association with India like Ajaz Patel did. Ishodi's an interesting one because he is quite tall, and he was brought up in South Auckland, despite the fact he was born in India. But he's very much a local product in terms of the way he bowls. He bowls like a Southern Hemisphere spinner, not like an Indian spinner. And why he ended up being a spin bowler is probably simply because he grew up watching Shane Warne rather than anything else. And he turned to be out pretty good at it.
Sure. Coming back to the match, what is the update with Kane Williamson's injury? Will he be fit, or if he's not fit, who's gonna replace?
They made the decision that they were going to be incredibly cautious for the second match. So any minor strain or niggle, they were not risking it. So BJ Watling would have played if this was the final. Kane Williamson would have played if this was the final. Colin de Grandhomme would have played if this was the final. Mitchell Santner maybe not, because he couldn't actually turn the ball with a cut on a spinning finger. So some would argue that he doesn't turn the ball anyway. But yeah, he probably wouldn't have played. But the rest of them are being rested out of precaution rather than out of necessity. I think you'll see Williamson and Watling and playing. De Grandhomme will be a case of if they feel he fits with the balance.
His replacement, I think, what's his name? Tim Young.
Young's come in for Williamson.
Yeah, and his, not a bad debut, to be honest.
Well, it's not his debut. He played a couple of matches against
sure.
First overseas match, but he's a serious talent. I mean, Will Young has been knocking on the door. It was a couple of years ago when he first came through from the under-19s. Everyone was just saying it was a matter of time before he was the next New Zealand captain. And then he didn't quite press on. Some of the domestic bowlers figured out some weaknesses with him, and he had a couple of bad seasons. But he went away and worked on his game, and he's come back demonstrating what we all thought that he was capable of. And he in a lot of ways, he's more like Ross Taylor, say, than like Kane Williamson, or he's a guy that just accumulates runs. You can't really remember too many of the shots he played. You get to the end of the innings and you go, oh, what did he actually do there? He played a couple of cover drives and a cut shot that were quite good when you watch the replay, but you didn't really notice them at the time. He just goes about scoring runs. And Conway's similar. You don't really. I mean, he plays some beautiful cover drives because he's a left-hander, and most of them seem to do that. But it's more about the fact that he just, he waits until the ball's there in his zone to hit it, and he puts it away. He just is just clinical, and that's quite exciting in terms of, they don't exciting in terms of results, maybe not in terms of viewing quality. But these guys get the job done.
That is the biggest find of this particular test series, isn't it? Convoy. Did the world find a new test opener? Because the way he's batting, he's not like he's being overwhelmed by what he's achieved, especially the 200 that he achieved in Lords. He's in for a long run. I think he's kind of like, I'm here to stay and I'm here to do more. That's the sort of vibe he gives out.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the things New Zealand's been doing is I've been picking players that are a bit older. So, I mean, Young is 28, Conway's 29. These guys know their game. They've played, they've got, I don't know, I don't know how many, maybe 10, 12 first-class centuries under their belt. They know how to score runs. They know how to get through tough times. Traditionally, that's not the sort of player New Zealand picked. New Zealand picked guys who had an average of 25 in domestic cricket, but had played a couple of nice shots, and they thought, well, we'll give him a shot and see how he goes. Guys like Ken Rutherford, beautiful batsman to watch. You watch Ken Rutherford, you'd think he was the best batsman in the world. And then you look at his career and he averaged 26 or something in Test cricket. You think, and he ended up captaining New Zealand and being our number one batsman for a while. And that was basically typical of New Zealand selections for a long time. Now we wouldn't see it. We wouldn't see another player picked like that. They've got to have put the numbers together.
Sure.
And that's so Conway, we all knew he was going to be successful. We weren't so sure he was going to be successful as an opener though, because he bats at number 4 for Wellington, number 4 and number 3, and that's his success had mostly been when the openers were put on a good stand, and then he came in and the shine had been seen off the ball. So it's like, well, how's he going to go facing the new ball? No problems. He's looked solid as. So that's encouraging.
Speaking of India, what would be your plan if you put your statistician or like coach hat on for New Zealand?
Yep.
What would be your plans for India? Where do you see the chinks in their armor? What would you try to go for, in terms of gaining advantage over them? Any weaknesses in the batting? Any weaknesses in the bowling? How do you, dismantle the bowling plans or batting plans and so on? What would be your...
Okay, so here's the things I would look at. I think Indian bowlers are incredibly good when they are when they feel like they're on top and they've got the energy. I think if you take the legs out of them and you get to the second new ball, they're not nearly as effective. And if you can get them if you can see off that new ball period, get through that first 30 overs until the quick bowlers are not used to big loads of overs. So if you can, and this is a pretty of a dangerous strategy. If you can see off the quicks and then really climb into the spinners when they first come on, Ashwin is better now, but it still takes a while to settle down. So don't let him settle. Don't if you let Ashwin bowl you, he'll start bowling hand grenades. You've got to get on top of him before he gets a chance to settle down. Jadeja's a little bit tougher because he skids under. If you try and take him on, you can cause problems, but that's you've got to make the fast bowlers play bowl a lot of overs, take the legs out of them. So that's the first thing. In terms of the batting, we know that India's batsmen are amazing when the ball's keeping low and when there's not much sideways movement. So if you let them get to the 20th over before Virat Kohli comes in, you're going to be chasing leather for a long time. You've got to get Kohli in before the 15th over if you can. So you've got to get through those. You've got to get that first 2 wickets up quickly. And so I guess the risk is you've got to give them a few hittable deliveries. Don't let them just defend. You've got to make them try and play their shots so that you give the chance of getting them out. So those would be my sort of thoughts. The other thing is we've seen that in England they struggled a bit against left-arm spinners that didn't spin the ball. So maybe Mitchell Santner is in his element if we get him back.
Sure.
But I think the big thing is that and just be persistently at them. It's Test cricket's about pressure. So you just never let the pressure off. And even the best players will crack if you keep them under pressure long enough.
And what would India be looking at New Zealand? Because New Zealand seemingly a strong side. Do you think any chinks in the armor? So do you think India is going to go with two spinners? How do you think India is going to tackle New Zealand's bowling? Because they are used to these conditions. They've played a couple of test matches. They have some game time and so on. So what do you think New Zealand should watch out for?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing is going to be, it'll depend on the pitch, but you've got to go with Jadeja Ashwin if they're both fit and able to play. I mean, they can both bat. That you can play those two and three quicks and still have decent batting. So that's the first thing. You have being able to have them turning from both directions. Ashwin is vital, absolutely vital. The New Zealand left-handers have not faced much off spin. There's not many off spinners in New Zealand at the moment. There's only a couple of them, and they're not great. So Ashwin is going to be the key bowler, and it's a case of trying to set him up to bowl against the left-handers. The second Henry Nicholls comes in, Ashwin should be in the attack. He's not great against off spin. He is probably the best batsman in the world against pace. So don't put your don't have two pace bowlers when he's batting. Get them off. Get Ashwin on straight away. And so that's the sort of thing you look at matchups a little bit. I think it might not be silly to start off with spin. Start with Jadeja against or Ashwin.
Interesting. You spoke about the bowling. What would New Zealand bowlers watch out for in Indian batsmen? Obviously, there are some gun gems of Indian batsmen, but you should not go in that mindset. You should always go in the mindset of like, we have to get them out. So what are they going to do?
Well, I mean, the first thing is you want to try and get them to play away from their body. On those sort of pitches, if you're starting to play away from your body, which is a really good way to play on Indian pitches. That's the way that you score, is by playing away from your body, put your hands through the ball. It's a really good technique, the sort of pitches that India has. It's not a very good technique for an English pitch. So getting them playing in that sort of mode that they're comfortable with, getting them to go away from what they've been thinking in terms of their plans for what not to do, that would be a thing. So leaving the covers open, leaving them open, say, have a go. If you hit a ball through there and get four, well done. But we're going to give you a chance to try and hit that shot so that we can get you getting the inside edge into the stumps or the outside edge into the stumps. I mean, I think you've got to dangle the carrot a little bit. But the way New Zealand's been going about the game has seemed to work so far. So probably the main thing is don't change too much. What's been happening has been working. It's a real risk that when you're suddenly in a final, you go away from the thing that's got you to the final. What's got them there has worked for them. They should keep doing it.
Excellent. Last couple of questions, Michael. So probable 11 of New Zealand would be Convoy, Latham, Williamson, Taylor,
Henry Nicholls, DJ Watling. Then there's a lot of question marks.
Yeah.
I think what they're going to go for is the Gronholm, Jameson, Southey, Patel, Bolt. Is I think what they're going to go for. They may decide to go for Santner instead of the Gronholm and Wagener instead of Patel, or they may decide to. There's various other options. They might decide to go with Daryl Mitchell for the extra batting and as a fifth bowler, and say, well, he's just holding one end, and that means that then they can run the four specialist bowlers. I'm not sure, but I think Jamieson hasn't done enough yet that I'd say he's a lock-in. But Wagener, but he's probably done enough that Wagner's got to work hard to keep the spot, and he didn't do enough in the first innings, I don't think.
Sure. And India's probable 11 would be Gill, Rohit Sharma, Pujara, Kohli, Rahane, Pant, 6 batsmen, and you think that they would go with both Jadeja and Ashwin and 3 quicks?
Yeah, that's the way I'd do it if I was them.
Even the 3 quicks, right? Bumrah, Shami, and Ishant Sharma, right? I think Siraj will struggle to keep his place.
Yeah, I mean, look, Siraj is a good bowler, and that's. I mean, both teams have 14 or 15 players that are capable of playing in this game.
Sure.
And it's really just about finding the balance.
Sure.
So you look with you've got 3 very different bowlers with Shami, Ishant, and Bumrah. I think Ishant Sharma is a bit like Tim Southey, has been a late bloomer, but it really is an outstanding bowler now. And he offers something in terms of his ability to move around the crease and the height that he gets the extra bounce. He offers something that the other Indian bowlers don't, but then Bumrah offers stuff that the others don't as well. New Zealand handled Bumrah pretty well when they've faced him so far.
Sure.
But you don't drop him on that basis.
No.
On a couple of games, you still got to pick him. And I think Shami is a wonderful bowler too. So that's the way I'd be going.
And also, Ishant Sharma has played for Sussex, and he has the experience. So, prediction, Michael, who do you think, who has the better chance? I mean, you have to do this. This is the most dreadful thing to do, but you have to.
Well, I mean, I said before, I think it's 55-45 sort of odds. Or I think India are probably slightly ahead, but it's going to come down to 2 or 3 good bits of cricket. And if New Zealand get a couple of early breakthroughs, India could crumble really quickly, and it would look one-sided. But at the same time, one of those balls, the catch doesn't quite go to hand. There will be 2 or 3 opportunities early on. If New Zealand don't grab them, they could be chasing leather for a long time.
Sure,
it's quite conceivable with these batting lineups and bowling lineups that you could see either side bowled out for less than 200, or either side score more than 500. It's just all about who takes the chances.
Sure.
And that's wonderful. It's why we should probably have. It'd be good to have a 5-test series rather than a one-off test.
Yeah.
But finals are always about finding a winner, not always about finding the best team.
Yeah.
And so it's about who takes their chances. I think India are still slightly favoured, but only slightly.
I think even New Zealand, I think that New Zealand has a decent team to give a better farewell for BJ Watling and possibly Ross Taylor's last World Test Championship, or do you think he'll make it to the next final?
Oh, I'd love it if he made it to the next final. I don't think we're going to make the next final. We've got a much harder draw.
Right.
But look, I think Ross may focus on white ball cricket soon because he's still one of the best ODI batsmen in the world, and he's slipping a little bit in tests. But in saying that, he's doing pretty well in the current one.
Sure.
Not out overnight. So if he goes on and scores a big 100, then all will be forgiven.
Sure.
So it'll be interesting to see. I think really Ross Taylor, if he keeps scoring runs, he's going to keep his spot in the side. And he said he wants to play into his mid-40s. So he looks at Yunus Khan and those guys, and they've kept going, and he sees why can't he? And in some ways, it's good for New Zealand cricket the longer he hangs on, simply because of him being Polynesian, and cricket not being a very popular game amongst Polynesians. He's hugely influential. I taught in a school that was mostly Polynesian. Most of the students were Polynesian, and he was the only cricketer that most of them could name. They didn't know anyone else in the team except for Ross Taylor.
Sure.
And he's the man, Ross Taylor. They loved him, and I knew all stories about what songs his mother sang when she was in church and whose cousin he was, and they were all telling me all this stuff. He was the hero. He was the focus of the team for those young people, and so he's a very important person in terms of the development of cricket in New Zealand.
Well, my prediction is, Michael, that India will dominate for the 4 days, and on the 5th day they will have 30 minutes of bad cricket and probably lose the match like Adelaide. And because we are sick and tired of the story since 2017 Champions Trophy final and 2019 semi-final and then Adelaide and so on, right? So I won't be surprised if that repeats and we will just go back to our old ways. But what a test match it's going to be. Fantastic that it's 6 days. One for the rainy day of rainy England, but a fantastic test match to look forward to. Thank you, Michael, very much for your time.
The weather forecast is wonderful. It's looking 30 degrees and fine for all the days. So that's really going to help the spinners potentially.
Perfect. It's going to be probably Patel versus Patel. Probably the other Patel won't make it into the 11, but it's going to be a fascinating test match nevertheless.
Absolutely.
That's it from this episode. Thank you very much, Michael, for your time, and till we see you next time.
Welcome.
Episode 5. Bye, everyone.